Fantastic. Then let's dive in because I want to make the most of our time. David, welcome. Thank you for carving out time in your busy day and busy schedule to be with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would you please, let's start off. Can you just give us the brief 2-minute overview of your career trajectory from your undergraduate education at a fabulous university to
Yes.
where you are now? Give us the 2-minute overview and then we'll go back and kind of break things down in more detail.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. My name is David Coy. I am currently the communications manager for the Bar Association of San Francisco. And that also means that I'm the communications lead for our 501c3 nonprofit, the Justice and Diversity Center. And so I can start just my freshman year at Santa Cruz. I really feel that a lot of the things that I did during my time while at Santa Cruz um, really helped set me up for success and some of my early career that then set up my success later in my career. My first year at Santa Cruz, I was I'm college nine, and I was a by the time I left, they changed the name to Student Life and University Guide, aka a tour guide, and I really enjoyed that. I really like people, and so I think that's a big part of communications work. And so that was a great kind of just job to have during kind of basically my around 3 years of my time at Santa Cruz. I taught a class my sophomore year. It was the Model UN class for College Nine, which was a really interesting experience because I was a sophomore teaching seniors, and I had a really great teaching partner. And I certainly learned a lot during that experience. I also founded a student organization called Students Taking Action Now Darfur, and I was the Santa Cruz lead, and I spoke at a regents meeting and worked with other chapters to divest around $2 billion of UC funds from companies that did business with the government of Sudan. And my next few years, I studied abroad in Italy, which was a great experience. And then, really, the most kind of formative experience was the UCDC program, where I interned for the current mayor of Oakland, Barbara Lee, because she was my representative representing Berkeley and Oakland. So I graduated in 2008, which is really not a great time to get a job, and so I had to just really be open to things, to a lot of different things. Um, I did some temp work, just did odd jobs around in my community. But I also did a in-district internship for then Congressman George Miller, who represented kind of Richmond, Vallejo, Contra Costa County. And it was during that time that I went back to the inauguration in 2009, and like so many other people, tried to get a job on Capitol Hill. But I also really felt the call to service, and I soon met with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And 8 months later, I was in New Orleans, where I spent a year of service with 11 other people doing similar work. And this is really where my first kind of step of career development started. And so I was a development assistant slash recreation assistant at a place called Reconcile New Orleans. It was a culinary and hospitality training program for opportunity youth kind of 16 to 24 who are not in school or a job. And so I not only kind of started to learn about development, fundraising, and the storytelling that comes with that, I would also hop in the kitchen and fry catfish if I needed, based on what the needs of the day were. And so I came back after a year and just did some work in some Catholic schools in East Bay. I soon got a job at an organization called Family Aid Catholic Education, where that supported families' access to Catholic schools. And so that was a fundraising position. I had a really great boss who I learned a lot from. And but after about a year, I just uh, didn't feel a great connection to work. I really liked the storytelling aspect of it. I had made a video with a local creative and was really inspired by that. So we kind of broke off and started our own little video company, making videos for St. Mary's College um, uh, and just kind of some local nonprofits. But it was really that I got an opportunity at an organization called REDF, Roberts Enterprise Development Fund, and it's where I just kind of got my foot in the door to be their part-time administrative assistant for events, partnerships, and communications. And I took over their social media and really just kind of did whatever needed to be done. Just give me a problem, I'll fix it. And I was there for exactly 6 years, and we worked with 9 partners in the state of California. We provided essentially support to social enterprises. So you may have heard of Homeboy Industries down in LA, and more, and even closer, the Homeless Garden Project. I've actually worked with them down on Pacific Street, and and by the time I left, we were working in 25 states with over 100 partners. And so it was during that time that I really solidified my communications career and kept on growing. I left looking for a new opportunity. I worked at a local organization called Save the Bay, which was shortened by COVID. I was only there for about 9 months. And so I was unemployed for about a year, but it was during the kind of the mid COVID, but also I took that opportunity to learn new skills, audio recording, just different skills that I could add to my toolkit, just knowing that content and content creation was going to be a huge part of any job that I move into. And I know all of this has been really kind of socially geared, but the next place was a total kind of whiplash. I was the communications and membership manager at the Moraga Country Club. And so I was there for about a year, still learned a lot, built them a new website, and then left just, I was ready to be out of there. And then a few months later, I started at the Bar Association of San Francisco, which has been a really incredible experience. It has been really my bridge. I kind of work at more of a director level, even though I'm at a manager title. And I'm the lead for 13 unique programs that have different audiences, different messengers, different clients, everything from our events. We hold about 300 events a year. We're the most active bar association in the country and probably pound for pound the world. And but also, I support our Justice and Diversity Center that does a lot of work from our homeless advocacy project, helping keep people housed, to our immigrant legal defense program, where if you have heard about what has been going on with San Francisco and ICE agents taking people at their court appointments, our lawyers are the ones who are filing the habeas petitions to get those, to make sure that those people get out and don't get transferred to another facility in Hawaii or Texas.
Wow.
And
Well, thank you for all of
yeah, so I've
that.
been here about 3 years.
That is exciting work that you are doing now, and a very cool trajectory that you've had. Thank you for that
Hmm.
overview. I would love to rewind a
Yeah.
little bit and hear, when in your undergraduate career, you studied history, the Americas
Hmm.
and Africa. Give us just, the 30-second clip of when you graduated. What did you think you wanted to do with that degree? Just real briefly.
Yeah, I think the the strongest kind of parts of the major that I found were about the stories. I mean, that's what I've always loved about history, is the stories and storytelling, and um, uh, but also the investigation part of it, and what is necessary as part of that. How to read critically, how to think critically, how to write. You're going to hear me talk about writing a fair amount, but how to write for different audiences. And so coming out, it's funny, there were not as many opportunities, I think, for history majors when I graduated. It was either kind of like continue as a student or become a teacher. Whereas now, just because of things like podcasts and YouTube, you can actually be a content creator and actually do history. And for some people, make a pretty decent living.
Well, then I know, you mentioned you briefly tried out government work as an intern with two different representatives who you mentioned. How did you know that that work wasn't really what you wanted? And what really prompted you to pivot to development and then to communications?
It it was really funny. My first day on Capitol Hill, I wore my nicest suit. I was so excited, and I go into the office, and everyone's wearing jeans because when your member is out of town or Congress is out of session, you can dress a lot of pretty casually. Although there are stories of Nancy Pelosi staffers not realizing that she would be in the office and sliding out the back door and going home to change. So, um, but it was. So as an intern, you get to see how legislation, all these different moving pieces of our government, how legislation is created, how fast it can be created, who they work with, how do you actually physically get signatures on things? They send interns around, and staff will typically um, put their boss's signature down. But it was just during that time, just to see the different frustrations, to see one example was our someone in our staff was doing a lot of work doing a trip to Cuba, an official kind of trip to Cuba, and to see how fast that fell apart. It was just these little frustrations, but also to see structural frustrations. Like came out of that experience just becoming a full believer in the need to abolish the United States Senate. I mean, it's really one of those experiences of course, having a view of what I hoped it would be, but to see how it actually works. And but I learned a lot from it. It also kind of made me incredibly pragmatic about how do you actually kind of build power? How do you actually change things? What are the mechanisms to that? Because it's one thing to, I'm a big supporter of Medicare for all, but how do you actually make that work? And so, what are the pieces involved in that? And then when I was in district, you do a lot of kind of um, support for your constituents from the State Department has held up these wedding rings that I had made in Ireland, and I don't know why they're being held to, just helping people access their social security benefits. And so, but it was also just really kind of coming out of that time and feeling the call to service and wanting to give back in some way because of what I had been given with my education at Santa Cruz and the support I had gotten for that.
Thank
And
you for
so I,
that. Your passion really, really comes through there. That's
right.
And so obviously, the switch for you then, kind of into development, really into communication and storytelling and sharing those impacting stories, because that's where the real change, can motivate those stories can motivate people to
Mhm.
change. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds like to me that at this point, communications is your sweet spot.
it
It
is.
is your passion. So I'm curious, how would you actually define communication work? Like what type of work falls under
Yeah.
that umbrella? And if folks want to go into that industry, what skills should they be focusing on building? So two questions, like
Yeah.
what falls under the
Yeah.
communications umbrella? And if someone here is listening and is like, oh, of the things you
Yeah.
listed, yes, I would like to do some of that. What skills should they focus on now that could tee them up for a role in communications in the future?
Yeah. So I would say communications comes down to any way you can build connections. And so that is really the broad kind of field of communications because while my work is in social impact communications, it kind of means you're doing everything. Whereas you look at some of these larger companies, I mean, you could have a whole career in internal communications, which is just, you look at these big companies like Kaiser Permanente, they have huge internal communications departments where it's just to keep people informed about what is going on at the organization. Another, but really, uh, it's funny because I just even like 8 years ago or so in my resume, I would say traditional and digital communications because now it's just all one because digital communications, email marketing, social media, content creation. It's really amazing how you just the videos you can produce nowadays without even having to go out and create and get your own footage. But then you also have public relations, just general engagement. Whereas if you know you have an audience of some form, you have their information, you have their email address, what do you do to make sure that you stay connected with them, whether it be a blog post from your CEO or executive director to just giving an update on a program to the public in a way. Another area is executive communications. Brand is a huge issue for executive nowadays, and there are people whose sole career is executive communications, and so can an executive position themselves as a thought leader? How do you respond to crises too? So really a way to kind of build into this is a lot of the basics of being able to um, write well. That is going to be something, even with, I've been really impressed with the growth of AI. particularly Claude and writing. But you need to be a good writer to know good writing in some ways, and it's a lifelong skill. I mean, I found honestly I found my kind of final paper from my core class recently, and I'm just shocked that I understand the English language. I mean, it's really one of those things where it's a lifelong journey, and to continue to grow and build on that.
Right.
And
So
so,
that definitely, being huge. How
yeah,
how would you advise students? I mean, you bring up AI, and this isn't on our question sheet, but I'm going to pivot a
yeah,
tiny bit anyway.
it's worth
How
talking
would
about.
you encourage students who are wanting to go into communication to use AI, not use AI,
Yeah,
partner with AI, use AI as a resource, and just give us the 1 or 2 minute. We don't
yeah,
expect you to be an AI expert or anything,
no,
but it really is a very, very relevant piece of the puzzle going into communications right now, like live time. What would your
yeah.
advice be regarding using AI if you're a communications professional?
I would say use it as a tool. That's the best way I can use it as a tool. I think um, I've been more and more impressed recently. I was a skeptic early on, but in particular ways of helping you find the right word or just helping you rephrase things, but also making sure that you know that it's quality work, because people are smart. People are highly attuned to AI slop, and if they just see, I mean, I find for myself where a restaurant I like started using AI images, and it's just like how that, and it's just clear, and so it's just how that really just lowers my opinion. Whereas you can use it to just give yourself extra capacity, but knowing that uh, that you will be the final judge, you will be the person to give it structure. It's using it as a tool versus really leaning heavy on it,
I love
because
that. Thank you. I think that's
yeah,
I think that's wise, like you like using it as an adjunct piece, not as your core. I want to keep us moving
exactly.
because you've got more good stuff to share with us. Um, how is I want us to change directions a little bit. You really focus on communications for organizations that are
Mhm,
mission driven, and really socially impact focused.
mhm.
How is that different? How is that type of work different from more of the kind of the broader communications field at large?
Yeah.
Like what's easier or harder, or all kind of the pros and cons in
Yeah.
the niche that you're in with mission driven, social impact, purpose, focus versus someone, who's going to get a job just whatever, maintaining the blog for a, finance company or
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, it comes down to marketing is another department that you'll have a relationship with if you're in a for profit in a lot of places. Marketing, essentially, how you position the organization, how you position the product, is a separate department. Whereas communications is more about um, just your kind of straight messages where you're not pitching things and trying to inform the public. Whereas in a mission driven environment, you are everything. It's rarely does you only get rarely, only at these really large nonprofits do you have a marketing department. And so you have to not only do the piece of um, making sure that you are maintaining your brand and kind of following the best practices, but also how do you position your organization? So it has to be this mixture. And so I like that. I actually really like that because it helps keep my work diverse. And but also in a mission driven organization, you are doing everything. And I think the thing of one of the reasons I really stayed with this is that every level that I've moved up, there's been a new challenge and kind of part to this work that has been really interesting and really rewarding and exploring. So my first kind of area was in social media and building that up and going from writing 140 character tweets to writing blog posts and writing snappy emails that will get people's attention, that will not only inform people but maybe inspire them to donate money. And then I'm moving up to the level I'm at now, public relations and working with the press. That is something that I just have always wanted to do, and now I get an opportunity to do that because you get to not only position your organization in strong ways, but you get to have influence as well. You really get to put uh, put your stories out there and to um, uh, put narratives out to change things, because to learn about how the uh, our lawyers from Immigrant Legal Defense, how they have ICE officers breaking down and screaming at them because they're filing hate petitions, and it kind of and you kind of learn these things that the public needs to know about this because it just shows what a paper tiger they are, and so you really get this in mission driven this you get everything, whereas if you are going to be in a larger organization you can be you can maybe in a kind of starter role kind of sample everything and then be able to really pursue an area that you really like.
Right. Well, and that makes sense, depending on what one's passion is. Do you want something that's like everything, everything? Do you want something where you can kind of narrow your focus and really hone a skill in a specific
Exactly.
area? And obviously the content of what you're communicating is different, in a mission-driven social impact organization than say something else. Thank you for that. Those are good mental notes about that industry. Where do you see the field of organizational communications going in the next 5 years? What is the
Yeah.
trajectory, especially with things like AI and, maybe even if you're able to draw back and really give us the industry-wide, or
Yeah.
not just, in mission-driven work or, social impact work, but the whole field of organizational communications. What's your hunch? And none of us have a
Yeah.
crystal ball, but
Yeah.
like,
Right.
where do you think things are trending over the next 5 years, especially as some of our undergraduates are graduating, are wanting to pursue work in the field? What are your thoughts about the type of field they'd be walking into?
Yeah. It's a really great question because it's something I think about all the time. One of my favorite things to study and learn in history was about in lifetimes how technology would change and how that affected people's lives. And so, uh, I think AI will be pretty. I wouldn't say it's not. I don't think it's going to be as disruptive as our mobile technology because when you're looking back at history, nothing has disrupted life like the mobile phone. Um, I think how people use it is going to be a really important factor in all this because it's not going to be something like it's going to be our boss or anything, but you find really interesting ways to use AI. And so I think how you use that, particularly around kind of extra capacity for content um, creation, is going to be really important. Being able to work with AI to produce an article, but it's not just written by AI, where you have a little bit more of a hands on um, um, kind of experience. I think also it does feel, and I mean, this is from tracking kind of informally job postings, but it does feel like it's going to be a period of expansion for communications jobs um, because it used to be not everyone needed to have an opinion, but in some ways now everyone does need to have an opinion or prepared to release an opinion because I don't think a lot of people would think that just to see from the volume of work and where my organization stands now on certain things. But then you also have to be able to be nimble and kind of work in a rapidly changing world too. We had to. We realized we have a large scholarship program for underrepresented groups in the legal profession, and we found that we had to update our language because it could be legally liable because of the current administration, and so having to work through that. And so um, it's really about uh, how how is everything connected from PR to social media, and so how can you build kind of a broad swath of skills of being able I'd say the best skill in communications is being nimble, being able to switch from task to task to task to task, because sometimes you're working on something really small, but then you need to work on something really big. Something comes in from your executive director that you need to respond to, and while keeping these other kind of balls in the air. And so it's how you can work with that with a team, but then also continue to build your base skills, particularly around writing. And because and really the best way I become a better writer is by reading, reading people that you like, reading people whose prose you find really good, because you'll pick up certain things or see how someone shared an idea. And so, because in the world of communications, that will flow all down through the content you create, social media posts, the press releases that you write, how you position things when you're talking to the press, or even just in communications. I found if you can, the best piece of advice I ever got from my dad was, you'll never be the smartest person in the room. And of course, after my first time of like, hey, like, it's like, no, like, because uh, you can be the most influential, you can be the most informed, and and so you can then bring those elements to then influence people who are leading your organization. Because one thing I was not expecting in communications is, you, even at a lower level, you really get access to the rooms where it happens. As it is that you are in meetings with people that I last year, because of the, I'll just say, our the current administration's hatred of the Constitution, we started working with organizations around the country to hold rallies on May 1st, which is Law Day. And so we had a rally here in San Francisco with about 1,200 people. We had over 50 rallies across the country, with about a little over 10,000 people attending. And I did not think that I was going to be on these meetings with the recent head of the American Bar Association and people, these really big kind of hitters in the legal world, and I'm the one giving them advice about how to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, you're
You know,
there.
I'm
You're in the
there,
room.
and
I'm
and
loving
I'm
where you're
trusted.
going
Yeah.
with this conversation, because you're pivoting right into, my final question. Then I want
Mm.
us to wrap up
Yeah.
and offer space for students to ask questions. My final question for you, and you've already definitely covered some of it, is what advice would you give to students who are wanting to go into communications? And I
Mhm.
think definitely, all of your advice surrounding write, get better at writing, focus on your writing skills, all of that. Also, your advice, to be open to things like partnering with AI or using AI, or just being open to where is the industry going in general. Any other just kind of final nugget, little succinct piece of advice that you would give? And then I really want to open things up for students
Yeah.
to ask questions.
Um, I would say, just, you know, I took myself a little too seriously in college. I think that was something of, because I wasn't kind of doing this for the joy or exploration. It was for part of, it was for my resume in some ways. I mean, I studied in Italy because that was fun and great, but I did UCDC because I wanted to explore this world, but I knew that that was my first step to working in that world. And I mean, it also gave me some office skills that kind of made me a more attractive candidate early on out of college.
But what does that mean when
Yeah,
you say,
yeah,
like, don't take yourself too seriously? Like,
yeah,
what would be a concrete piece of,
yeah.
encouragement to students there?
I would say tap into the joy of the work, of the tasks that you find. Because for me, the thing that really clicked was when I was in my first communications job and I was talking with my boss and just talking about the work and realizing, oh, I like doing all these things. And so, with having that attitude of uh, it, being okay to fail.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
something
yeah.
when I was thinking about my time back at Santa Cruz, I talked about the student organization that I founded. It did not go well. I failed a lot. I mean, I remember standing in Quarry Plaza during a candlelight vigil, and my little cupper and my candle catching on fire while I was speaking. And like, that's kind of the perfect example of like how it went. But we still
Mhm.
we had some wins, but it was just kind of like, okay, well, what did I learn from that experience?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just finding and so just being able to being okay with fail. And also, even being a young person in the room, bring your new ideas, because the organization Rediff that I worked with, where we worked with social enterprises, a lot of them were in service industries.
Mhm.
And so, you don't want to give bed bug abatement for the holidays. And so they allowed me to, I pitched an idea about finding organizations around the country that made products and doing a holiday gift guide, one of which was the Homeless Garden Project in Santa Cruz. And so that is now running today, and still today, about 12 years after I first did it, as a year round project. And I will say just
David, that's
one, yeah,
exciting because I mean, you've given us examples, of things that you've tried that kind of failed, but you did some good learning, and
yeah,
things that you've tried that, like, yeah, have continued on and have a real legacy. I love it. I mean, what I'm hearing from you as advice for students is focus on your writing,
yeah,
like always, like, for your entire life, like
yeah,
continue to hone your writing, be open to unique possibilities, connect with the joy of why you do what you do, and really
exactly.
stay in touch with that, if you're wanting to do
Yeah.
that. Don't be afraid to fail. And
Hmm.
and also, I mean, I would say don't be afraid to succeed. If
Yeah,
something
that,
awesome is going well. I want to pivot us and
yeah,
allow our last 10 minutes,
yeah,
for students to ask questions.
great.
So if you're attending here on Zoom, you are welcome to either unmute yourself and just ask a question, come on video and ask a question, pop something in the chat. We have an expert in the communications field right here. We have 10 more minutes with this human, and this is what I like to call the Ask Me Anything
Yeah,
season, where
please.
like you can ask David anything about their undergraduate career, about what they've done since then, advice about the future, whatever it is. So who's got something that you're curious about or you want a little advice or perspective on, and we'll pick David's brain about a few more things.
Hi, my name's Chloe. I was curious, David, how did you go about like finding these opportunities in general, like once you graduated? Or
Oh,
yeah, finding jobs or any opportunities that you pursued.
yeah. Well, it was kind of, I'd say three different tracks. There's just a general kind of just being aware of what's out there. I have gotten my last two jobs through LinkedIn. So the LinkedIn Easy Apply is a shockingly kind of good tool I've found because you can not only get your resume in quickly, but you can reach out to the job poster. And that is a thing that will kind of get you on people's radar. I got really close to a job that I was not necessarily qualified for, but I performed so well in interviews and the work sample that it was really encouraging to get that far as for a PR firm. Another place is network. I've gotten some jobs through just having a network and finding what are, if you're going to, depending on what city you're in, what are the different organizations that you can get involved in. So when I was working in fundraising, I got involved with the organization here in the Bay Area called Development Executives Roundtable, which is just the affinity group for fundraisers. So find that affinity group of either in a kind of industry that you're interested in or with the local kind of communications groups. And then another one is just find the organizations that you would just love to work for that and and so then you can just keep up from time to time, or you can set alerts because you might be in the perfect place to apply to a job at a company or organization you've really wanted to work at. And that's how I got my job at Rediff. I knew what they were doing, and I got really and any kind of position that they had that I was remotely qualified for, I applied to because then they asked me, they actually ended up calling me and asked me to apply to the job that I would end up getting.
Thank you for that. That's good insight. Somebody else, what would you like to ask? Well, I've got a question for
Yeah,
you then,
please.
David. On this theme of, like breaking into an industry, we all know that the job market is a little tough right now.
It is.
And that quite frankly, I mean, many businesses might be pivoting towards something like AI to help them with their communications, et cetera. What what advice would you give to students about navigating about what are the various tools at their disposal for
Mhm.
navigating, breaking into the communications world? Should they focus on networking? Should they
Mhm.
focus on an internship? Should they focus on freelancing and just like trying to get their work out there no
Yeah.
matter what? If students are really passionate about doing communications, there's lots of different avenues that they could try upon
Mhm.
graduation. What do you think are some of, and again, not that you're like God or anything,
Yeah.
but what do you think are some of the most relevant ones for someone who's wanting to pursue communications right away?
Yeah. I would say networking, internships. I would first go with internships because that's just a good way to get your foot in the door. Sometimes timing works out well too, where they have an open position that you can kind of seamlessly go into because a lot of jobs today are really more about culture fits and figuring out and kind of, you can kind of figure out almost any job in some way. But um, so I'd say just internships. I also found too that I had some really interesting temp gigs as well, whereas they know what you're interested in and they knew I was interested in policy. And even though it was just a receptionist job for a week, they put me at this think tank in Oakland that does really great work. And so just to be known and it'll also give you an idea of like, oh, I'm really interested in this work. And after doing a short kind of stint, say, I'm not interested in this work anymore.
And clarity is always a good thing, whether
Yeah.
the clarity is yes, I want this, or the clarity is no, I don't want this. I think temp work can be a very interesting, like just dipping a toe in the water there. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. Anybody else have questions? I know we got to wrap up within the next few minutes here. I want to honor everyone's time, but is there anything else, that you'd like to pick the brain of an expert who is here and while you have access to them? Awesome. David,
Yeah.
anything you would want to close by saying, that you would
Yeah.
encourage undergraduates with who are considering, work in this field?
Yeah, I would say figure out what's I've talked about different tasks. I'd say, kind of look into communications jobs, see what are the specific tasks that they list, and are and kind of figure out what that would be for you in practice. Does it sound like it's something that you really want to do? Because there are different, it could be the same job, but just based off of the organization or the company, it can be very different. And so really seeing if that is the joy that it'll bring you. Um, I would also say one thing I really want to make sure I mention is as best you can, uh, don't give any space to imposter syndrome because can I tell you, I have been in rooms with some of I'll say, lesser titans of Silicon Valley and with just so many brilliant people, but because they aren't natural communicators, it's almost this weird piece of that then you are the expert for them, even though they could be these really brilliant people. And so really just to trust yourself and to trust your place in the room too, because you will have a lot to offer and to just and also just knowing you don't know um, where a job might lead to because I never thought I would be working on rallies that will bring together over 1,000 lawyers now every year. I hope we don't have to have them anymore, but um, just to give yourself the opportunity, give yourself the grace to go out to explore and to be okay with failure too, because um, it's almost like failure can be easier than success sometimes because you can say, I didn't do this well. I'm going to move past this. I have my learning. I'm going to keep going. Whereas, there are these uh, stories about actors who give these amazing performances on stage one night. People said, "How do you do it?" And you say, "I don't know." Where you have some wild success, and you just kind of think back and say, "Oh, it's a team effort. Everyone did their jobs, but there's nothing to learn from this." And so
Mm.
really just being okay with all of that and just making sure that you come in with a resilient mindset because sometimes you can be in an organization doing during good times, during bad times, during both, and just to be able to roll with that and to really make sure that also too I've been really impressed with I have a team of uh, two just outstanding Gen Z women who really I'm so impressed by their focus on mental health and mental well-being, and so making sure that you do take space for that.
I love
Yeah,
that. Then
so
we're going to wrap up on those notes. That is beautiful. Trust yourself.
mhm.
Don't be afraid to fail and take care of yourself. I mean
Hmm.
that's like advice not just for the communications world. Like that's good for all
Overall.
of life. Like that you can take that to the bank on anything. David, thank you. I am confident after hearing more about your role and what you're doing. I'm confident that you are a busy human with a lot going on, and so it speaks value to the people that are here that you'd be willing to take this hour to really connect and really offer some of your good learning from
No,
life, and offer that to others. So thank you. I want to encourage everybody if you want to, follow David on
yeah,
LinkedIn or,
please do.
whatnot. Like that's a great avenue to stay connected, see his work, see what's going on with him. And we're going to wrap up. I do want to, honor everybody's time. Meredith, do you want to kick us off into that raffle?
I will do the raffle after the event, so I'll email the winner. So everyone keep an eye. You'll get an email, one that is to everyone, just post-event information, and then one special winner will get your individual email saying that you've won and telling you when you can come get your tumbler. So keep your
Fantastic.
fingers crossed.
Love it. Love it. Everyone, thank you for being here today. We recognize
Thank you
students
for
take a lot of
attending.
your time as well. So thanks for showing up. You are welcome to log off and go have a great rest of the afternoon on this cozy rainy day here at UCSC.